Hi everyone, Nans here from Info.Tech.Journal. We're going to continue on our video series, and in this particular one, we're going to be focusing on Java Swing. As most of you might be familiar, there's currently two main flavors of graphical user interface development or creation in Java. You can either use Swing or JavaFX. Certainly, JavaFX is the newer one. Java Swing is the older brother or sister to JavaFX. In the creation of this, when I was passing it to my colleagues, I did actually use FX as well and Java Swing. When I was passing it to them, they actually told me to just use Java Swing, because they're a bit more familiar with it. And as well, with JavaFX, especially currently JavaFX, you actually have to do a little bit setting up in your IDE to actually get the libraries in, to get the builders in. If you want to perform drag and drop style graphical user interface building, it's not as seamless if you were to use it with Swing. So towards the end, I finally decided to use Swing. So here we are. So what we'll be discussing on Swing. With Swing, there's definitely a lot of moving components to it. So I won't be discussing everything under the sky for Swing, namely the things that we'll be using. So of course, we'll start up with some basics on what is a frame. So of course, we're going to discuss what is a frame, the frame component of Java Swing, and we'll also be using JLabels, if I can spell it correctly, JLabels, JButtons, okay, and of course the one I like is JProgressBar. What these are the specific components that I use. So with JButtons, we're gonna actually combine it with ActionListeners. With JProgressBar, it's good to be standalone, but we will also be adding a little bit to it, because if you do it standalone, the program would actually run sequentially, and it will not wait or show you the activities that's going in the background in terms of the progress bar. So we'll be using here in conjunction with Swing Worker. Okay, just a brief overview on how we get the progress bar to actually show us the progress bar or the progress of the PowerShell script we're running. So these are the basic outlines. Okay, in terms of layout for Swing, there's a few layout constructions that we can use, but in terms of how we're going to do it, if you've done any sort of graphical user interface before with Java or anything else, you know that the layout, trying to get everything, each and every component in the right position, is the most cumbersome part or most tedious part. So for this one, we will be actually using a builder for it. Okay, this builder is inbuilt with my IDE that I've used, which is NetBeans. So it's a NetBeans builder. The basic is pretty much the same for if you're using Eclipse or using IntelliJ as well. So it actually applies, and I'm gonna use this with some of my pet peeves, or in simpler terms, my preference. So how I would actually start my project with the builder and then finish it up. So let's go and let's get started. So we will be going into this is my NetBeans IDE. Let's start with just producing a simple frame. Okay, let's start with producing a simple frame. So with this, I've already made a YouTube PowerShell project, okay, or Java project, and I've already made a package YouTube PowerShell project, and here is where we will start our main. My usual naming convention is I would end it with app, just to indicate or just to let me know that that is where my main resides. So we're gonna go to here, and we're just gonna simply make a simple JFrame. Okay, if you see here, there's another line there, as usual. we need to import JFrame. So JFrame, I'm gonna say it's gonna be my frame. Okay. And let's say new JFrame. Okay. Well, right now there's nothing. If you just do this, you won't see anything. Okay. We actually have to set it a few parameters before you actually can see it. Okay. Namely, if you were to just run this right now, okay, just run anyway. It has to be built and you won't see anything. Okay, you won't see anything because you actually have to make it visible. So that's here at the bottom. I'm gonna say my frame. Okay, dot set visibility, and I'm gonna say it's true. And then we're gonna run it again. So don't worry about the errors because it's something else. As you can see now, I do have a frame, but it's no size, no nothing. It's quite small. As you can see here, I can't even move it, so I can resize it. I can move it. So initially, if you can see the size, it was basically just empty. Okay. So we're gonna delete this because that's the one that's causing the error. So now, as you can see here, I made it visible, but if I were just to run it, you can see it's just a very small screen, but I can still resize it, and there's nothing there. Let's make it have a certain size so we can start to work with it. So we're just gonna say my frame, okay, and we're gonna say set size, and it's gonna say width and height or dimension D. So usually people go to width and height, so I'm gonna say 500 because it takes an integer. And if we're gonna run it again, you will see now it's 500 by 500. Okay, here's another thing that when everybody's starting out with Java Swing, it's a bit annoying because, okay, people will just, okay, I'll design my frame, yada yada yada, and they will press X. When they press the X button, they will think that the frame or the Java application actually exits or terminates. But if you look at the bottom corner, if you minimize this a bit, and you can see here, it actually says it's still running and my stop sign is still available because you're not actually stopping it or terminating the program. When you press X, the default value is actually just to hide the frame. So we have to tell Java or tell our program that if we press X, we want to actually make sure that the frame or the application closes. So we have to tell that. So I'm gonna say my frame again. Frame dot set default close operation. Okay, set default close operation, and I'm gonna say here JFrame or my frame, or you could say JFrame as well. JFrame dot exit on close. Exit on close. So let's look at the difference. I'm gonna go here. It's running. This is my Java application or my frame right now, my initial frame with the actual size of 500. Now I press X. If you notice here, the application says running. So let's just go here so you can better see it. So this is running, and look at the stop sign. Once I say X, it's actually built successful and actually says it's not running anymore. So you just have to be careful if you're doing this, and you just don't want to run. And you can see tabs keep on showing up in the bottom. It's actually just hidden because the default is actually just to hide the frame. Another thing that I personally like to do is once you have set up everything, the size is nice, and you have your layout properly for each element, you don't want people to just resize the screen. So let's say if we go here, people can still, even though I say it's 500 as actual size, you can still resize it. Right? You can still resize it, you can still maximize it, you can still make it a bit smaller and such. So you don't want that to happen. So what I usually do is, okay, I would set my frame, okay, and I will let it know that I don't want it to be resized. So I said set resizable, and I would say the boolean value is false. The boolean value is false. So how do we make sure? Again, we just run it again, and you can see now even the maximize button is grayed out, so you can't click the maximize button, and the resizing arrows are not available. So this just makes it a bit cleaner, so people can't just resize and change the setting, because with this the elements are a bit static. So if you start to resize it, it'll still stay the same and it'll just look awful. So my preference is to set resizable to false. Okay, set resizable to false. Another thing that I personally like to do as well for this particular one is my frame. I can set the title. So right now you see there's nothing here, there's no title. So you can actually say my frame dot, okay, and then you say set title. Everything if you want to set, just set title. It's similar to what we did in the naming convention for a verb. So set title, okay, my frame, okay, sorry, remember that Java is case sensitive, so my frame set title, okay, and I'm gonna say the title takes a string. This is my title, okay, and I'm gonna say press play or execute. So as you can see here, this says this is my title. So that's what we want to show, just to show it there's a title there. And then that is the basic components that I actually want to show you for Java Swing in terms of a JFrame. So let's continue on to the next section. Let's continue along. In this particular next section, we're gonna be using the simple concept of having our JFrame in a separate class, just to make sure that it's easier for us to identify which class is for which frame, and it also makes us enables us to have a frame open for a particular instance that we want. So also it makes it clearer for our main class to not contain all our frames. It just doesn't make sense that you're using Java with object-oriented mentality inside, and then you dump all your frame codes in just your main. So in order for us to do that, well, let's just do this. So what I like to do is I would open a package and I would say app GUI for my package, just to have a separate package, just to make sure it's clear. So whatever functionalities I have in the bottom for one my package is just to run the main and all the supporting elements. And then we have app GUI, which is a package that's going to hold all my frames. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say Java class. In this next section, we'll also be introducing labels. So JLabel. So I'm going to say JLabel. Okay. And this is going to be just, that means it's a JLabel tutorial. Finish. So this is where we're going to have all our frames and all its associated elements. So I'm going to say public class JLabel, but this is actually not enough because we want to make sure that this is actually part of the JFrame family. So we're going to say extends JFrame. So once I do that, it also imports the JFrame into this class. So we're going to do this. So we have this as well. So rather, there's two ways to do this. Some people like to have it in the constructor. So I'm going to say public JLabel, and this is the constructor. Some people like to have every single element in their constructor. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in my constructor. So sometimes some people like to do this. So everything is in their constructor. But for me, I like to separate it out. So in my constructor, I keep it clean. So it's easier for me to swap methods calls or elements in my constructor. So I would actually do this. I would say private void init components, and have all the associated settings elements for my frame in this init component, and I will call init component in my constructor. Again, this makes your code a bit more flexible. Let's say you have a different component that you want to call in or not have visible. Okay, also it makes the code a bit more reusable as well. So it is up for your preference. Okay, now we don't really need this anymore, this particular line, just because that this class actually extends JFrame, so it itself is a JFrame. So there's two options for this. You can just change my frame, and to change my frame to this because it's referencing itself. But again, this is kind of redundant. If you want to be clear, I do know some people who want to be clear and explicit in saying, okay, this is for this class frame. But for me, I would just say set size like that, because it does know that we're working with the frame itself. Okay, so I'm gonna just delete all my frames here. Let's change this title so we know this is a different one. So I'm gonna say here JLabel frame. Okay, JLabel frame. So here we go back to our main one. So this frame is still here. So if you go press F6, it still opens. This is my title. Okay, this is my title. This is the initial one. So if you want to open a new one in your main, you say new, okay, and you say JLabel like that. Not label, not label. Okay. Sorry. So make sure you're also importing that in here as well, JLabel, okay, and then it'll ask you to import because it is in a different package. Okay, so now we have JLabel like that. So if I run this, okay, they're gonna be on top of each other, but then you do see here now it is a JLabel frame, and then this is the initial frame that we want. So you can open now two frames as well, but then that's not what we want. Usually we just have main and it just opens us the primary frame that we want. Okay, in our actual development later, when we go through making the GUI that I actually use for this project, you will actually see this as my welcome screen. So on main, it will just open the welcome screen as well, just to have it separate. Again, this is again a style or a preference. So now we have JLabel. So when you open this, we have our main frame here. Okay, you might also see this. Some people might not set visibility here, right? And they might just set the visibility here. Since this is a class that extends JFrame, you can actually access the methods to using the dot operator, and all the methods that are available for JFrame are accessible. So I'm gonna say here set visibility and true. Okay, you can also do it like this if you want. Okay, now let's go back to our JLabel. We've already achieved one of the objectives here is just to make our code a bit cleaner and have a way to open a frame from our main class. So the main point is don't forget to extend your JFrame, and the rest is up to preference. You can all put all this code in your constructor or have it in a separate method that you can actually modify in the methods constraints as well. Okay, now moving along to the next part. The next part, we're going to be working with labels. What is a label? Okay, in simple terms, labels are just a GUI display area where it can store strings or an image or both. So for this one, let's just create a label. So how we're gonna make a label? I'm gonna say JLabel. Okay, I'm gonna say my label. Okay, and I'm gonna say new JLabel. Okay, a new JLabel. So when we make a label, if we run this, it will not show us anything at the moment because we have to add stuff to the label. So I'm gonna say JLabel. I'm gonna say my label. Okay, my label. And I'm gonna say, let's just add a simple text. So I'm gonna say set text. And this, I'm gonna say this is my label. Again, we have already set the text. If we do this again, it's not gonna show anything because we've not actually added that label to the frame. So we'll go here, we're gonna say add. Okay, this add, you can also say this dot add, just to be clear, but also, you can also just say add because you're referencing this to the frame, the class. So I'm gonna say add. What I'm gonna add, my label. I'm gonna add my label. So we're gonna press F6. Now you can see here is just something that shows us the label. This is my label. Okay. Now we can also add in icons or images to it. So for this particular one, if you look at my files, I already have a logo here. That's my logo. The logos is actually in the same directory as everything for my particular Java project. So logo size 165 JPG. So we're just gonna copy the name. Okay, just have it there. So in order for us to actually have that logo in, you actually have to use an image icon. So I'm gonna say image icon. Okay, image icon is another separate class, which is in Java Swing. That is to hold your image. So I'm gonna say here my logo. Okay, my logo. And I'm gonna say new image icon. Okay, for this particular one, you set it to your directory, or where you put it. So the image icon, and it says Java Swing here, and you pass it where your file name exists. So since it is in the same directory as well, so I'm gonna say logo underscore size, okay, 165.jpg. Again, this has to be a string, so we're gonna surround it with quotation marks. Okay, since it is already here, but sometimes you put your file somewhere else. Let's say you put it in your app GUI folder or something, you have to specify where it is in your directory. Another thing that I've used as a simple practice, sometimes you're not sure that, okay, did I put that directory right, okay, in that particular location? So in order for you to do that, right, I like to do this as a test. So underneath I would say CUT. Okay, we know that you can use the Java IO file to find if a file exists. So if you say new java.io io.file, okay, not final, file, okay, and then you pass in the name of the file, which is this, and you say dot exists. Okay, no, exit exists. Okay, this will check if it's actually in the directory, okay, the parent directory of your project. So that's just a quick test, just a quick tip as well. So if you press F6 and you see here, we haven't added to our frame, but it says true here. That means it's good to go for you to actually use it and add it to your label. So this is just an extra tip that sometimes I forget where I put it, or I just assume that, oh, the image is in my project folder, it exists and Java will be able to find it, but sometimes it's not. So it's just good practice to just make sure it exists and your Java project can actually find it. Okay, next thing, you know that you already have this, my logo. The next thing is to actually set the icon for your label. So I'm gonna say here, my label. Okay, set icon is what you want, that icon, and the icon is my logo. Okay, So now we already have that. We don't have to re-add it since it's already added here. You already added my label to the frame. So we're gonna say F6. And now you can see here's the logo and here's the text, logo and text. Next step would be just to things that I prefer. Sometimes you want to set the position. Let's say I want to set the position of the text to be atop here. So make sure you set horizontal. Okay, that means you set horizontal position to be centered and the vertical position to be on top. So let's just go step by step. That's a setting for my label. So I'm gonna say my label dot set horizontal position, text position, and I'm gonna say here where am I gonna no I'm saying my label, I'm gonna say it to be centered. So this is just a way to check. You're gonna run it first, and you see here now it's right smack dab in the center. We're just going through this as a quick overview. It is a positional thing, so you can, if you want more information, you can just simply Google it. Just Google set horizontal text position, and you can see where it is. You can set center, you can set it top or left or right. It is up to you, but this is me just showing you that it is possible. Sometimes all you need to know is that it's possible and that there is an option for it for you to find further. If you don't know it all, you won't even know what to actually find. So now I'm gonna say here my label, I'm gonna set vertical text position, set vertical text position here, and I'm gonna say here my label, and I'm gonna say here it's gonna be the top one, and I'm gonna say F6. Now if you can see here, the label is now center and on top. You see all this white space? There's a lot of white space. There's another thing that I like to do is to pack. What do you mean by pack? It compresses everything. So I just do like say pack, and that is packing the frame. So say here, now you can see it's actually confined to the size of the icon and the label itself. Okay, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get annoyed when it's not actually showing me in the center, because our eyes tend to be in the center of the screen, and I have to move my cursor over and over again to test, and it's always on the top left side. So there's another option here if you want. Okay, I'm gonna set the location, set location relative to. Okay, this is an option where you want to set it to. So if you put this to null, right, and you run it, it actually sits a bit more to the center, so you don't have to move your cursor left and right, especially if you have a widescreen monitor. It can be a few drags to the left, a few drags to the right. If you're doing a project and you know that it's gonna be a while, just set relative location. That mouse drag does get a bit tedious after a while. So just another quick tip. Set location relative to null. We'll set it to somewhere around the center of your screen. Okay, in this particular part of the video, we've already discussed about JLabels. JLabels can hold text, can hold an image, or it can hold both as well. So in the next one, we will be working on buttons and also an action listener for that particular button. Now, let's start working with buttons. So let's go back to our project. Just to keep everything clean and pristine, in my app GUI package, I'm just gonna right click and make a new class. For this one, I'm gonna say JButton tutorial. So in JButton tutorial, similarly, if you want to do the same thing as we previously did, where we can call on this class and get a new frame, we have to extend this. If I can spell extends, then it's JFrame, and also import JFrame itself. the basic structure is going to be pretty much the same. So we will have our constructor, and I'm going to say private void init components. And here we're going to do all our components for our frame. And here I'm going to call the constructor JButton. I'm going to call the constructor, and I'm going to call init components. Just to keep it consistent. Okay, just to keep it consistent. So we have our basic structure. We're going to put it in. Same as what we have last time. So we're just going to change the title. Hopefully you still remember. So this is button frame, just to be sure. Exit on default, and everything here is pretty much the same. So let's just add set visibility to true. Okay, and this is what we have. Remember, we did this and we called it from our main. Now let's head over to our main method here. So it's new JLabel tut. So this is not JLabel. We just change it to now our button. JButton button JButton. Okay. Let's see, why is it not happy with that one? Okay, we imported JAP app GUI, but only JButton tut. So let's just import everything. Okay. Now we imported everything. We don't need this one here anymore because we're just making the button there, the frame. Let's run it. And we have here button frame. So right now, of course, we don't have any buttons. So let's go back here and let's make our button. So similarly, it's the same like everything else. We're gonna start with some sort of J and something. So of course, it's gonna be something like JButton. Okay, it's gonna say, wow, I don't know what JButton is. So we're just gonna import the JButton. Now JButton is imported. So I'm gonna say my button, just to keep consistent for this particular example. JButton, my button equals new JButton. Okay, now we have our button. So what do we have to do next? We have to add it to our frame. So we're gonna say add JButton. Sorry, not JButton, my button. Oops, my button, and closer. So let's run this and see what happens. Right, we don't see anything as of yet because we have not set any parameters for our button. Okay, let's go and check other parameters for our button. So let's just say we set the size of our button. Okay, my button dot bound bounds. We're just gonna say a size. Just make it random size. Our size right now is 500. We don't want to make it bigger than our frame, so let's just say it's 200, 100, 100, and oh, that's not 100. That's 1000. Let's go run it again. And now we see some sort of icon here, and that's our button, which currently does nothing. So let's add a text to button. So the same, my button, we're gonna set the text. The text is a string, so something, just for the name. Try again. Now it has something here. Okay, we just want to see the button. So let's compact it. So we're gonna make it as compact or as small as possible. You remember when we did in the previous video this command? Pack. So we're just gonna pack it. So I usually like to make my set visible to be the last one. and also of course any sort of action calls will be at the bottom. So I'm going to say pack. We're going to see what happens. Now, oops, we don't see anything, even the button. So sometimes pack doesn't really work, so you have to make sure to try it out and see if it actually suits what you want. So we don't want to put pack there. Okay, that's just a side note, so you can try and test how it goes with your layout. So we have something here. So now, right now, the purpose of a button is basically to perform an action when it is clicked on. So we need to make that button perform something. So for now, let's just do something simple. So I'm gonna say my button. So I usually like to have my actions at the bottom. So it's up to your preference. Okay, I'm saying my button. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna add an action listener to this. So add action listener. So we're gonna say add action listener. There's a couple methods to actually perform an action on a button, but I personally like to use the lambda expression. So if you can just check what a lambda expression is if you want to read further, but the syntax goes basically like you say E and you perform an arrow. And what do you want to do after that? What is the action that you want to do? Let's just do something simple here. Oops. Oops. All right. Why? Okay. So let's just do something simple. We're gonna maybe call a method. Okay. So let's just make a method here. So I'm gonna say here private void, and I'm gonna say here button action. Button action. And it does nothing there, but it simply just prints out the line. And I would say button clicked. This is the more common way to do it. If you want to perform action, you actually call a method. So you say here button action. Notice our console screen here, and then we have our button. So I'm gonna say F6. If I click on something, button click, button click, button click. You see, button click, button click, button click. Okay, right. So sometimes people also do this, but I don't really like it because to me it's not as readable. It still does the same thing. Button click, button click, button click. But again, it's preference. I like to actually explicitly call a method after my lambda in my lambda expression, E arrow, and then whatever method to perform because it's a bit cleaner. And you can also do multiple things to it. For example, let's say when we do a button click, we want to call in or open our JLabel tut frame. So we're just gonna say new here, JLabel, and we're gonna say set visible. True. Okay, so we're gonna do it. So a few F6 here. So that's our button frame. And take here, click here, and then you notice that it's two button click, button click. There's actually two here. If we move this around, let's see. Because it's compact, it's harder to move it. So just to show you, I'm gonna exit out of this. I'm gonna change here. I am not gonna say pack. So I have more space to actually click on the top portion, the bar, so I can move it around. So I'm gonna go here again, F6. I'll say here, move something. Now here, button. Okay, I know something again. Right. What I was trying to do just now was because it was too packed. I didn't have any space on top to actually click on this bar to move it. So every time you say button click, you can open a new window, a new frame. So as you can see, that's why I actually like having it called a method for an action listener. So again, we created our button. Okay, we specified some parameters for our button, namely here set boundaries and set text. And then we've added our button to the frame, and then we added an action listener to the button itself. So with here, you can see I called in a method using my lambda expression here, and I made the private method for button action. So that's how you use a button. We've covered the basics for buttons, labels, and how to make a frame. The next section, we will proceed with a simple progress bar. Let's continue with the progress bar section. We're gonna do a simple progress bar. In this particular example, the progress bar that we will be making is a deterministic progress bar. There's two types of common progress bar usually. There's a deterministic, where you know when a certain action is going to be completed, like a count down from 100 to 1, or a count up from 100 to 1 to 100. So in our main program, it's gonna be undeterministic. So it's not deterministic. So we don't know when it's gonna end, because it depends on PowerShell, the complexity of your scripts and such. And also in our main program, we will also be using a swing worker, because when our process is executing the PowerShell script, we want to do the progress bar in the background, because the way our program is done, or the way Java does it, if you don't split off into a background task to do the progress bar only gets executed once the control is passed back to that particular line in the code. So just to keep it simple, for this one, we will be doing the deterministic progress bar as an example, or a base, a foundation for us to build further later. Okay, let's continue. So as per usual, the way we're gonna do this is we will create another class. For the class here, we will make here JProgressBar, as usual. JProgressBar. So let's just open it directly here. So JProgressBar. Okay, for this one, it's gonna be the same as usual. We want to make sure that this extends. I'm doing this again over and over again just to show you that it's basically the same thing. If you want to start another frame or start programming another frame as well, so we want to program that in. So we extend Java JFrames, and then we have our constructor. But first, we're gonna say private, as I would always prefer to do it, void init components. Okay, and this is where we're gonna have our actual components, and now we're gonna do our constructor. So it's gonna be public, a progress bar, as usual, and here we call init components. As a base, it's gonna be the same as what we did previously. Okay, as a base, so we're just gonna copy our frame. Okay, as a base, so this is gonna be the same, because this is what we're gonna do. So here we're gonna say here JProgressButton, JProgressBar. Okay, JProgressBar, and everything is pretty much the same. Okay, again, we will go back to our main. In our main, we're just gonna change this. So we will be doing JProgressBar, and then set visibility. So we're just gonna test again as usual. Yes. Okay. So now we have JProgressBar. Okay, JProgressBar. So in this particular one, we're gonna continue on and actually modify our JProgressBar. To actually make our JProgressBar, we're gonna go back to our class here. This one is slightly different. If you notice the previous ones, where we declare our variables or our components, we actually declared it in init component. For JProgressBar, we're gonna have to declare it as a class field or class variable. So I'm gonna say here, I want to make a JProgressBar. So with this one, I'm gonna say JProgressBar. It's the same like everything else. Okay, I'm gonna say JProgressBar. Okay, for again, we have to import that one, JProgressBar, my progress bar equals new progress bar. So now we have those things already. Okay, just making sure that the recording is still running. JProgressBar, progress bar. Okay, now we have those already in. This is our declaration, and we just made a progress bar. So here again, from here we're gonna add the elements to the progress bar. So how are we gonna add the components to a progress bar? The same thing we've been doing. So we're gonna say, okay, the bar has to start with a certain value. The bar has to start with a certain value. We're doing a deterministic one, so we're doing a count up from 0 to 100. So I'm gonna say my progress bar, and I'm gonna say the set value. So this just tells us what value to start from. So I'm gonna say here at 0 because it takes an int. Okay. So and then since we're doing this, I'm not doing any layout for this. This is null because we're gonna handle layout with the builder later. So I have to tell it where I'm gonna put it. So I'm gonna say my progress bar, and I'm gonna say set bounds. Oh, sorry, my progress bar. Not this. This is not what I want. Set bounds. Yeah, set bounds. So we're gonna say top left corner. So I'm gonna say 0. That's a 0. What's the size or the length? Length is, I'm gonna have the whole length. So our size is actually 500 length. So I'm gonna say 500, and height of, let's say, 100. Okay, don't forget we still have to add our bar in. So I'm gonna say add. I'm gonna say my progress bar, and I'm gonna add it in. Let's go show it here. Now we have this empty bar. You can see there's a bar right there that represents our progress bar. Of course, right now it's not doing anything because we have not set the guidelines or tell it how it's gonna progress. Before we proceed, let's just say we want to show a string inside the progress bar, or the percentage, the number percentage of the bar. So I'm gonna say my progress bar again, and I'm gonna say set string painted. This basically says what you want to do inside. The difference between set string and set string painted. Set string painted is actually telling it to, okay, I want to show a certain string. So if you just say true here, okay, right now we have not set any string inside. So let's just say here, I press no, you see a percent sign. You see a percent sign. Okay, next thing. Let's just change the font a bit. So just make it bigger so we can see it. So I'm gonna say my progress bar again, the usual. I'm gonna say set font, and it takes in the font parameter. So I'm gonna say new font because I'm telling it what font I want. So let's just check. I'm gonna pick a font. Maybe Comic Sans MS. Oops, and then I'm gonna say font. It's gonna be bold, and it's gonna be a size maybe 50. Size 50. Okay. Font, and make sure you have imported the Java AWT font. So now it's good to go. We have our font. Let's run it again. Now you can see it's bold, it's big, and it's that particular font that I picked. Now, the reason why I actually made this as a field or a class variable is because we will have to call a certain method to get this to work. Okay, we're gonna make a method for the progress bar. So I'm gonna say private void progress like that. Okay, so in here we're gonna tell it, or we're gonna change this value. We're gonna change this particular value. So how are we gonna do that value? Okay, of course we will first make a count. This count is gonna be, okay, I have to tell what it is. Okay, int count equals 0. So that's what we're gonna do. So the count will start from 0. That's what we will do, and we will put in the count inside of a loop. I'm gonna say while count. Okay, well, count is less than or equal to 100. Okay, we will do some things, some stuff here. So of course, this number gets changed every single time. So we have to take this, right? I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna set this rather than specifying it to just 0. I'm gonna say count. Okay. Next thing we want to do is, if you just leave it like this, it's gonna be super fast. We won't be able to see anything. It will just and then it's done. So I'm gonna say there's a command to say thread sleep. It takes in milliseconds. Okay. So we're just gonna say maybe 50 milliseconds so we can actually see something. Okay. And if you see here, it's telling us, oh, there's something there. Okay, because it's a bit risky, it will tell us to surround it or do a try catch. So I'll pick a try catch. So you'll catch the interrupted exception. Okay, this is what we want. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. Just a try catch statement. And then after try catch statement, make sure we add the value for count. If not, it's gonna be just an infinite loop. So I'll say count. I am gonna add maybe let's just say 1. So every 50 milliseconds it's gonna add to 1. Okay, and after we finish the loop, remember I told you that we set the string painted. Set string painted is true. We can also set string. So let's just say here maybe it's done. So I'm gonna say my progress bar. Okay, I'm gonna set string. And what is the string? I'm gonna say done. Okay. So pretty much that is what we have right now. If you just leave it like that, it won't work as well, because you have to make sure that we're running it from init component. We will tell it to do the progress bar. We're gonna call it here. Okay. And then also as a rule of time, I find that sometimes if you set the visibility on the main class and you do a progress bar, the visibility is preferably set visibility here as well to true. Okay, just to have that extra cushion. Now let's run this. So we ran it, but if you can see, it's like not showing anything. It's running. Oh, it's not showing anything because it's actually at progress. Once it's done, then it's gonna pop up. So we don't want to be, we don't want it to be like that. Remember when I initially told you there was a deterministic and not deterministic? This is actually deterministic. We know when it's gonna be done, but the thing is, it will wait until this is done before it actually gets to set visible. Okay, so in order for us to make sure that actually does not happen, we change this and we put it on top. So just remember, if you have anything that takes a while, like takes a significant amount of time before you set the frame to be visible, it's always to make sure that that particular action gets done in the bottom and then you set visibility first. Okay, now let's run it again and we will see our progress bar counting. So that was a gotcha as well. When I was doing it initially, I was like, oh, what's going on? And I tried to look at all the forums and stuff, and then apparently that was it. So you have to make sure you set your visibility first before you do an action that will take up the process before it does the subsequent line. Okay, hopefully this has been useful to you. Before now, we've already done the basic components. Again, we've done the frame, how to open the frame in a separate window. We've also made sure that we have understood labels, understood buttons to take actions on a button, and a simple progress bar as well. The layout itself, we will then use the builder to streamline the process. Again, if you didn't know all of this components or all of this code, it's just a quick brush through. And then once we go to the builder, I will highlight again which component goes where and what parts to edit to better streamline our GUI. We're almost there. So off to the next section. Okay, now let's start earnestly building our actual graphical user interface for our application. So to use layout or a JFrame form for this particular one. That's what I call, that's what I've been saying, it's a builder. This one actually helps us to produce the layout. So without further ado, let's just go and let's see how we do it. So I'm gonna close everything else, and if you notice here, I have my logo in the same package, or if it's in the file view, it's actually in the same folder as my app GUI, where I store all my classes or all my frames. So just to keep it simple, So I'm gonna say JFrame form. I'm gonna say here, welcome test frame. Why do I say welcome test frame? This is just me. It's a meism, I would say. I use this JFrame form to build out the layout itself and all the elements in that frame, but I don't particularly like having it in the automatic JFrame code. So I usually just copy the code and just refactor it myself, or just change the way I like it, because I personally like to have my class variables on top before the constructor, and I have my methods at the bottom. So it's just the way I like it. So that's why I usually just say welcome test frame. Of course, it's a double work, but then everybody has their own thing. So my best friend used to say to each their own. So that's it. That's my spiel. Okay, now we get this. This is your JFrame form design. So you have your place here. This is where you actually design your frame, and these are the elements that you can use for your JFrame. Again, we've already used a label, so I'm gonna say a label. I'm gonna put a label here. So the basic is you're gonna rename the variable name. So I'm gonna say here JLabel logo, because I'm gonna put my logo here. And then I'm gonna go to properties and icon here. I am gonna select my logo, and I say okay, and now my logo is there. So from here, I'm gonna resize. If you were, let's say, not using this, this simple resizing can be a little bit cumbersome. It depends on your experience, but to me, it was a lot of cumbersomeness or a lot of work. So I like to use this just to have a basic idea of how to set it up. So here, I'm gonna go like that. I'm gonna resize this window again. Maybe put this a bit center. Okay, and then I'm gonna go and get a label, because label also can hold text. So I'm gonna say label here. I'm gonna say here edit variable name. I'm gonna say JLabel welcome message. Okay, and we'll change edit text. It's welcome to our, and I'm gonna make this center. Maybe make this a bit longer. Okay, right, that's good enough. It's good enough. Okay, and then of course we have our button. So I'm gonna say a button. JButton. So our button's there. Let's make it a bit longer, or split it up a bit. Okay, now we have a button. So I'm gonna change here, change variable name, JButton continue. I like to have descriptive names. Some people don't. They like to have shorthand names, but the full names are better because it makes more sense. Oh, again, that's to each their own. Okay, and I'm gonna change the text here, and I'm gonna say continue. Okay, so we even have a preview button here. So let's go check the eye. So that is how it's gonna look. Yeah, that's how it's gonna look. So I'm gonna cancel that, and you have the source. This is all the sources it is. As you can see, they have their class variable at the bottom. I don't particularly like that. They suppressed it here, the code. So you can see here, this is the main. This is where it's gonna invoke or make that welcome class. We can just throw that out later. This is where we suppress the actual code. So here, and this is where we make the design. So if you see here, we have a group layout. This is basically how it's gonna present it to us. That's why I didn't cover layouts, because I prefer to use this to just to streamline it. If you're not familiar with it, you can probably check Google, read, or other few resources, but basically I just don't touch this. I know how to do my own layout, but it just takes too long. This is just a lot simpler. Drag and drop, and pretty much you're done. Okay, so what do I say just now? Because this is the thing that that I don't like the way it's set up. So I usually just do this. Of course, this is double the work. I would just highlight this, make sure you suppress this again. And I'll highlight everything. Okay, until here. And then I copy. And then I'll make another class. I know this is, some people will say this is stupid. Why are you doing it 2 times? But I don't know. I just like doing it like this. So welcome frame. Okay, as I finish. So this is my welcome frame. And then I am gonna paste that in. Okay, for this one, this section, we don't need it, but I'm gonna just take this X, and I'm gonna delete this as well. Okay, we're gonna go to our main class that has the main. I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, done. Okay, I don't know why it says welcome test frame welcome. Because we've not changed this. Okay, we're just gonna delete this for now because we're gonna fix it later. Okay, why did I press it? Insert. Delete. Okay, and we're gonna go back here. Yeah, it doesn't like it because we have two of these names, so I'm gonna just copy X this, paste it here, and delete this. Okay, like I said, I actually like to have this is gonna be as well, and I like my variables to be on top. I'm gonna show you my variable on top, and delete this, and make sure everything is properly done. So here, it's done. Okay, so now everything's here, everything's proper, and we also have packed there. Okay, and now we can just change a few things as well. We can change a few things as well, but before that, let's just test it out. So this is a bit angry because just now it was test frame. So let's just test it out. Now we have our initial welcome. Again, if you notice, continue does nothing because we have not set an action for continue, but we can still say X. So that's how easy it is to actually get it started. Now, if you notice just now, it was on top. Let's fix that. Let's go back because I don't like it to be on top. We can close this now because we don't need that. We're gonna use this and we're gonna go here, pack. Again, it's a good practice to just set visibility here. Again, to be true. And then before you set visibility, make sure you're actually using set location to null, set location relative to, okay, and then I've set this to null just to make sure that it is in the middle. Okay, just to make sure it is in the middle. Okay, another thing I like to do as well is just make sure that all these actions, just make sure it is still there. So I'm gonna say here, and I'm gonna go here and here. So just to see all my actions, and this is also the section where I'm gonna put in my lambdas for my add action listeners. So let's go here. Now this is okay. Now it's smack them in the middle. To get ready for our next action, we're gonna make a method here. So we say here private priva, if I can spell, private void, and I'm gonna say here continue button action, and it does nothing, and it goes like there. So we're just making it ready right now. So once we're done, we're gonna say continue button will open the main frame that is gonna hold all our elements. So we can say here again, we know our button. If we say JButton continue, we say add action listener. Okay, we're gonna use the lambda expression again, and we're gonna say continue button action. So just to test it out, we say here SOUT, and I say continue button press, or better yet, click. Okay, just test it out. You see here, continue button click. That we know that action is properly going to that method. So our initial page is set. our initial page is set. Okay, that quick demo just now was just to show you how we actually use this particular option. Again, if you want to get this here, we just right click that package, new, and we say we want a JFrame form. For a JFrame form, to save time a bit, I'm pretty sure you have a basic understanding of how it is. It is as simple as that. You just drag and drop, and whichever element that you want, you can just add it here. Like if you want to delete, just delete. For example, we also had a progress bar in our initial example. We're gonna say here, we're gonna take the progress bar and we will put the progress bar here. And let's say you have a few more buttons, you can just add buttons here and then align them as you see fit. So I'm gonna say align there and make this a bit smaller so I can align it better. I am making this the same size and I'm gonna copy this, paste, paste, paste. And you can see here that's as simple as it gets to design and to add elements. So no, let's undo that one. You can even undo if it's like unruly. So I'm gonna undo. I'm gonna copy and paste again, and I'm gonna change the size. Copy and paste, change the size. Copy and paste, change the size. Or change the location, I would say. So here, let's say this one, we say this is get process. Okay, and then this one, get invalid cert. Invalid cert check or something like that. This one we might say edit clear output or clear screen. Okay, so for all these particular designs, it's quite easy to use this environment to actually help you out. So I am not gonna bore you to see me drag and drop items and renaming the variables. If I were just to highlight something, when you do copy and paste, make sure that you change the variable name so you actually know which button is for which, because this one says JButton, continue. So I'll just say get process button. Yeah, and then this one, if you check the variable name, it's just gonna say JButton continue 1 and valid start. So if you're going through this, just make sure that when you have all those elements, name them properly, take that additional time. If not, when you look at the source code, it's not going to really make sense because everything's going to be button 1, button 2, button 3, or like here, just like J button 1, J button 2, J button 3. Okay, if you heard of Sesame Street, or if you're old enough to actually know count from Sesame Street, 1, 2, 3, ha ha ha. It's just gonna be a lot of variables and it's just gonna be a nightmare. Okay, that jokes aside, I'm not gonna bore you on how I actually designed this because it's as that simple. You just drag and drop. For example, this is a JText area, so I just drag and drop a JText area. If you can see here, JText area. Okay, let's say JText area here. I'm gonna drag and drop here. If you can see, it's smart enough to actually put it in the J scroll panel. If you look here, it says J scroll panel, and inside it is JText area. Okay, so that's how you use this. And then again, if you're done with it, you can add the actions later. So in order to to save time and not make this video a bit longer than necessary, I've already made the frame itself. So I'm gonna just save this. So this is the frame. PS exec frame that we have. So if you look at the general structure, this is the code that was generated. Okay, we have pack, set location now, set visibility as well. Oops, set visibility too, and default close operations as in close. Exactly the same as what we did in the welcome frame. The only difference then is for each button that we made. So for example here, JProgressButton, JClearButton, and JInvalidButton, we also added the associated lambda expressions and the method that is going to be taken action once that button has been clicked. And I also have a few other supporting methods that I will share to you in this video as well. So let's just to get the finishing touches for this one. as in for welcome. Remember we had welcome just now? Okay, we want welcome to open this frame, which has all the elements that we've already designed. Hopefully you can use the JFrame builder again, like JFrame form, to make the form. It's quite straightforward. Just experiment with it and you will get something similar. So right now, all we need to do is just add that into this when we click on the continue button. So just to keep it simple, I'm just gonna copy this again. Go here and I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna paste that in. Rather than saying J welcome frame, I am just gonna substitute it with my PS exec frame. Now this will open our JPS frame here. So let's just go here, let's run it. So this is what we did just now. We say continue and it opens this pane. So additionally, we're gonna go through how this method gets executed as well. So that's just a quick overview of how I got it. You can do it yourself. For this particular section of GUI, we've pretty much done. The next video, we will explain each action perform or the procedures that each method takes when the button is clicked and the additional supporting functions that I use, methods that I use to support this project. Thank you for watching all this information for GUI. Java Swing.